It's here, it's here, it's here, exclaimed Mughal Emperor Jahangir when he visited Kashmir in 17th century. The snow-capped mountains and glaciers left him totally flabbergasted. But if he visits the same place after 100 years from now, he'll be shocked to see that there's not enough ice even to chill his beer. Kashmir has been losing its shine lately. Climate change is drastically eating away the glaciers, setting alarm bells ringing among the environmentalists. Climate change has brought about severe and possibly permanent alterations to our planet's ecological and geological systems. Climate change is a natural phenomenon and is bound to happen even without human interference. But human interference will accelerate these changes. There were three major climate change events in the past 5,000 years that drastically changed the course of Indian history. Each time it hit, our clock got reset by a few centuries. The first of these events ended the Indus Valley civilization. Around 2000 BC, the Indus Valley civilization was at its peak. It is believed that the civilization flourished on the banks of river Saraswati. The civilization had advanced city planning. It was trading far out with other civilizations. It had built huge granaries to save itself from monsoon smoothes. But the granaries were too small for a 200-year drought. Yes, you heard it right. There was a 200-year drought. River Saraswati completely dried up during this drought. The drought completely demolished the Indus Valley civilization. The second event ended the Gupta Empire. Around 450 AD, that is, 2,400 years after the end of Indus Valley civilization, another civilization took India to its heights. The Gupta Empire, contemporaries of the Roman Empire, was considered a golden age for India. This time, there were no massive droughts in India, but major changes in the climates of Central Asia caused famines and started pushing Central Asian nomads in all directions. These nomads invaded and destroyed the Gupta Empire. It took centuries for Indian science to get anywhere closer to what was achieved back then. This shows how strongly we can be impacted even if climate change affects a faraway region. The third climate change event facilitated the entry of British into India. Around 1700 AD, that is 1200 years after the fall of Gupta Empire, India was back on track again. Invasion stopped and we became the world's biggest economy. Things seemed to look quite well until another major climate change event occurred. The Little Ice Age started changing rainfall patterns in the northern hemisphere. Unusually dry and cold weathers prevailed over North America and Europe. There were prolonged droughts throughout Asia and Africa. The Mughal Empire was at its weakest phase in India, and these droughts made it even worse for the Mughals. This was a huge opening for British East India Company to take over India, and of course it was also helped by a wide variety of other reasons. But for the next 150 years, under the British rule, we suffered debilitating famines arising both out of maladministration and the effects of climate change. Upon close examination, one can notice that the time period between second and third climate change events is almost half the time period between first and second climate change events. The only explanation for this acceleration in climate change is human interference. If we continue at the same rate, the next major climate change event is predicted to be around 24th century. India's history offers sobering lessons on what climate change can do to wreck a civilization. The Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change in 2003 contended that there's new and stronger evidence which says most of the warming observed over the last 50 years is attributable to human activities. Sometimes our own country might not be directly affected by climate change, but the ripple effects of events elsewhere can substantially impact us. The World Health Organization estimates that more than 160,000 deaths since 1950 are directly attributable to climate change. The most recent example being the British petroleum oil spill of 2010, which released more than 4.9 billion barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. Over 8,000 animals were reported dead just 6 months after the spill, including many that were already on the endangered species list. The ecological balance of the area was greatly disturbed. The spill resulted in the release of methane gas, which created dead zones by completely removing oxygen from a few areas. Statistics show that methane is the second most prevalent greenhouse gas emitted from human activities. Americans use over 600 million gallons of gas every year on lawnmowers and weed whackers. They contribute about 10% of hydrocarbon emissions. Methane, hydrocarbons, and chlorofluorocarbons are the biggest contributors to global warming. As the climate warms, sea ice and ice sheets of Antarctica and Greenland continue to melt. This leads to further increase of sea levels and further warming up of the earth. These changes lead to permanent extreme weather events. For some though, the climate change, rising sea levels may completely leave them underwater. Maldives, planet's lowest lying country, stands at little more than 5 feet above the mean sea level. Maldives is going to be the first country submerged because of rising sea levels. The next in the list is the island nation Tuvalu, the country which is famous for its .tv internet domain. Tuvalu stands at a height of 6 feet above the mean sea level. The most pressing problem for Tuvalu is its diminishing reserves of fresh water on its less than 10 square miles of land. By 2080, around more than 80% of the people around the world would be experiencing floods every year because of rising sea levels. The biggest irony is when scientists say don't freak out about diseases like Ebola and swine flu, everyone panics. But when the same scientists say freak out about climate change, everyone laughs it off and says the climate around us looks perfectly fine. As human beings, we are vulnerable to confusing the unprecedented with the improbable. If, in our everyday experience, if something has never happened before, we generally assume that it's not going to happen in future. But there are always exceptions, and climate change is one such exception. It's not too late to act. Reduce the use of plastic and encourage recycling. Switch off electrical appliances when not in use. Use fluorescent light bulbs instead of traditional incandescent bulbs. Conserve as much energy as possible. Let's leave a better planet for our future. Thank you.